Welcome back for Lecture 8, the final lecture for English 343. As I mentioned in the last lecture, I won't be addressing Pennebaker and Smythe's final three chapters today. I'll leave that to your own interpretation. If you'd like to discuss anything in the Pennebaker and Smythe book, please do contact me. I'd be happy to meet with you, talk on the phone, or email. Today, what I'd like to address is simply the final articles that are due to be read before the end of the course. If you've forgotten, hopefully on the first day of class, as I mentioned in Lecture 1, that you downloaded the readings, but if not, the readings are here on Canvas. Okay? And I'll briefly make a few points about each one and conclude. First, Cheryl Fontaine's article, Recording and Transforming, is a pretty important one. And you'll notice in your reflective essay that I've asked you to analyze your journal entries with respect to Pennebaker and Smythe's text, as well as Fontaine's article, at a minimum. I think the two main points or main accomplishments of this article are, first, the four purposes that she claims, right? So she's claiming out of the 200 and some student free writes that she analyzed, that all of the students wrote for merely one of four or of four purposes, right? They may have used all four purposes, one of the four purposes, or some intermediate number of purposes, but that all of the free writing could be explained in terms of these four purposes. Number one, that they recorded real or imagined experiences. Two, they made plans or goals in their free writing. Three, they explored or solved problems. Four, they did that kind of higher order reflective thinking where they evaluated personal experiences or their own writing skill. And so a good way, if you really want to do well on the reflective essay, you could, for example, code your own free writes in terms of these four purposes. Get four different colors of highlighter and, highlight purpose number one in yellow, purpose number two in pink, that sort of thing. And get a sense of the degree to which you used these four purposes through your free writing this semester, and then and discuss that in the essay. And then another question would be: did you complete any free writing that doesn't fall into one of these four categories? In other words, is Fontaine's essay incomplete? That we need to add a fifth category based on the evidence that you've offered in your free writing journal. Or in your free writing essay. And so that would be something to discuss in the essay as well. So I think these four purposes could really help you investigate your writing with respect to one of the readings. Also, don't miss her discussion of the title of the article, right? Recording and Transforming. And so she's making the case that the free writers who seem to benefit from this task engaged in a process of cycling from concrete writing to more abstract writing, and then back to concrete, and then back to more abstract. And in that process of recording and then transforming, the students came to terms with whatever they were writing about. Essentially, they learned. An example here would be that she doesn't offer, but I'll give you an example. Might be, you can imagine some middle school student writing about problems at home, and offering concrete, very detailed description of problems at home with a brother and a sister, and kind of, they're vying for attention or reward from the parents. And then maybe the free writer kind of moves to a higher level of thinking and realizes, like, oh, this is a kind of rivalry, or I'm in competition with my brother in some way at home. That's what Fontaine means by transforming, right? Moving on to a higher level of thought regarding the concrete details being described in the journal. And then the student might even, or the free writer might even go further and say, maybe the student is, or the free writer has learned the term sibling rivalry. They might use that and they say, okay, what I'm really writing about here is just a matter of sibling rivalry. This is normal in most houses, and, on and on. So that would be a clear case of transforming because the person has sort of come to terms, categorized this experience, normalized it perhaps. So that's just one example of concrete and abstract cycling, and it's also something Fontaine discusses. And so again, you have that concept to use when analyzing your own free writes, and ask yourself, right? Again, your free writes again, make a Xerox copy of them or however you handled it, and now code the texts, the free writes that you've done, in terms of concrete description and more abstract meaning making, and see if you see any patterns there that corroborate or contradict Fontaine's assertions. Good fodder for writing the reflective essay. So that's all I'm going to say about Fontaine's piece. Topher and Walker, I think it's a pretty straightforward essay. I'll just mention that it's unique in two ways. One is it's moved from intrapersonal writing, right? Intrapersonal is the writing where the audience and author are the same person, and you're writing for yourself. And now Topher and Walker examines interpersonal writing a letter to someone else. Whether you mail it or not is another matter. And that its focuses on gratitude rather than traumas or troubles in your life, which is a kind of refreshing shift from the Pennebaker and Smythe book. And so the claims here are pretty straightforward. I'd say read that closely, and I think you'll understand it. Of course, you can ignore the statistics in Topher and Walker. Read it conceptually. I'll get back to that actually in the third large bullet here. The Moffat piece. Some students find that piece really easy to read, and some find it really hard to read. And I think the ones who find it really hard to read miss the notion that Moffat is that Moffat's central concept in this essay is inner speech, right? So Moffat is drawing off of Lev Vygotsky's notion of inner speech to situate writing in relation to other contemplative practices like mantras, chanting, meditation. Okay, what's inner speech? Be sure to realize and discuss this in your annotated bibliography, right? That inner speech is not the same as William James's notion of a stream of consciousness. Inner speech is a subset of William James's inner stream of consciousness. Okay, inner speech is the subset of one's stream of consciousness that is either in linguistic form or amenable to language. Okay, so there's a lot going on in one's stream of consciousness. Some of it, vague intuitions, images, awarenesses, and part of that, sensations, and part of that is codified in language, and we understand it in language, and some of it is not, but can be put into language. And it's those two qualities, the linguistic and the language amenable categories of stream of consciousness, that Moffat claims as Vygotsky's inner speech. Okay? And so, for example, I'll give you an example. Let's say we were in a classroom right now, and a person walked in the door. You're going to look at that person. Let's say it's someone you've never seen before. You're going to look at that person and get a vague sense of that person, right? A first impression. And some of that person's impression on you is probably capable of being put into words. You might be able to say something about the person. Let's just say it's a guy. He's tall, well dressed, but he's got this I don't know, a creepy air about him in some way. Okay, so you can kind of start to label and put words to this impression of a person. But there are probably qualities about this impression that are beyond speech and even beyond being capable of being put into speech. It's still part of your stream of consciousness, but that would be outside the realm of inner speech. Okay, So Vygotsky and Moffat are interested in that part of the stream of consciousness that is germane to speech or relevant to the world of language. And if you understand that, that's kind of the central, you know, the central part of the wheel, and then all these different practices are spokes off of it, right? You have writing then, which is essentially giving form to, right, composing literally that amorphous inner speech. You have other contemplative practices that Moffat talks about that stop or serialize that inner speech, right? Stopping it in its tracks is one thing something like contemplative meditation can do. Mantras can sort of serialize inner speech, meaning put it in a very narrow, linear, repetitious fashion. And so Moffat sees all of these contemplative practices, including writing, as just different ways to manipulate one's inner speech. He also discusses that sort of paradox that he claims from his own experience, which is that when you stop your inner speech through meditation and then turn it back on by stopping your meditation, usually what flows then is a richer kind of inner speech, a more vivid and robust and likely creative inner speech than if it were just flowing continuously. And so Moffat thinks that, meditation has an obvious connection to, say, creativity in this way, through this paradox of stopping one's inner speech, followed by the cessation of meditation, which then lets one return to inner speech that's more robust and rich than prior. So I'd say read Moffat with that in mind. Then the three medical pieces, Broderick et al., Demore et al., or four, Petrie et al., and Zakowski et al. The main thing here I want to say is be comfortable. Just ignore the statistics. In other words, don't even read the methods section. These are pieces from medical research. They're all doing a very similar experimental design, right? And they're looking for statistically significant differences in their measurements to offer, statistically significant claims. This is a writing class. We're not going to go into the logic of statistical inference. If you are interested in such things, please email me. We can talk. I've published a few pieces on statistical inference I could send you. We could just meet and discuss these methodological issues if you wish to. But I'm assuming that you're not that interested in the methodological issues, and that's what I would suggest as a default is just read these pieces for a conceptual understanding, right? These Broderick, Demore, Petrie, and Zakowski pieces. Understand what they were trying to do, what concepts were important to them, who they were studying, and probably most importantly, what claims were statistically significant, right? What did they find? And as I said before, you can so that these scientific articles are usually formatted very similarly. They start with an intro section, then a methods section, then a results section, then a discussion section. And I am suggesting reading the intro closely, skipping the methods section, reading the results for conceptually to understand what they're finding, and then the discussion to read that well, because the intro and the intro will frame the significance of the research and discuss what they're trying to accomplish. The results do give the findings, and that's important, but then the discussion really interprets the results, right? It shows what the significance of these results are. So intro, results, and discussion are important to read. Methods, you can forget about it. In the Zakowski piece, be sure to take time to understand what they mean by a buffering concept, okay? I'll leave it at that. If you have questions, I'd say the Zakowski piece is the most difficult of these four, at least in my opinion, because you have something going on that's not just a strict independent measure, dependent measure relationship. You have this intermediate quality, which is essentially social alienation or social support, right? And that intermediate variable moderates the relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable. And so if you don't understand what's going on by this buffering, be sure to email me, and we can ensure that you do get a clear understanding of it. So I'll leave you with that sort of those sorts of suggestions on how to read these pieces. And that concludes the lectures that I have to offer on this material. So between now and the end of the course, I'm simply relying on you to contact me and to use me as a resource as you work through this material. My worry is, of course, that if I don't hear from you, uh, maybe I'm worried that you're procrastinating, maybe you won't finish on time, and we just won't, you just won't have a successful experience with this course. So please prove me wrong. Email me, stay on track with the material. I'm happy to meet with you to discuss the material. And please be sure to submit the Pennebaker and Smythe book review no later than tomorrow night, July 9, 10 p.m. And be sure to get these two assignments in by 10 p.m. on the 18th before you start losing points for it being late. I'd also ask at the end of the semester if you would please complete the course evaluation. You will receive an email from the university asking you to complete this online. And while they're not required, it really does help me understand, your experience with the course. So good luck with the rest of the readings, and don't be a stranger. I'd love to hear from you if I can help.